Welcome to a new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. Today, I'm super excited to have Christy, Renee, Stehle with me. We've been like in the same circles and we've been kind of circulating and we've been talking about doing this podcast for quite some time. And we literally fulfilled the joke of like, see you next year. So we're officially in 2026 and we get to have this, what I know is going to be an awesome conversation. Christy's keynote speaker and coach focused on leadership and communication, which, is a lot. Those are loaded words. So it's kind of like marketing for me. Marketing is it really is a big word. So, Christy, I'm actually going to kick us off by allowing you to take a little bit of a deep dive on what exactly it is you do and where your focus is right now and for the rest of 2026.
Yeah, well, thank you for that intro. And I'm glad that we made it here. I think, you say the word marketing and that's loaded, and I agree. And my background was in helping organizations adapt their brand messaging to reach the next generation of buyers. Because a couple years ago, we entered into this shift where Gen Z really did become the primary workforce. And in order to reach these digital natives, brands had to adapt their communication, change their values, change how they're grabbing attention, all of these things. And one of the things that I loved helping brands do that, but it was slightly empty for me. It didn't have this connection to a real problem. And so when I had the opportunity to speak at IMEX America this year, well, in 2025, I was brought in to help the future leaders. And I started to see this reaching of the next generation in brain communication is really the same thing as reaching the next generation of talent. And we have this talent gap, this talent crisis that a lot of organizations are experiencing nationwide, especially my home industry of hospitality. So I've been serving as the mediator, helping bridge the generational gap, the cultural gap, and help leaders on both sides of the divide, senior leaders understanding how to reach the next gen, how to bring out the best of them. And then on the other side, what's really fulfilling for me is helping the next generation of leaders have confident communication and kind of build those people skills that we may hear they don't really have so much of, or the phone phobias and the soft skills and the presence and the shyness and all of that. Because for those who don't know me, I used to be the shyest person on the planet, and I have come a long way in developing leadership and communication skills, and being able to help really young leaders who feel that same anxiety is just so rewarding for me. So positioned on both sides and love what I'm doing now. Yes.
I love that. Yeah, we were kind of teasing before the show when I was asking, kind of what your mission is, and you were talking about bridging that gap, and I said those darn Gen Zers, right? Because I mean, we're joking, really, but absolutely. I mean, we all kind of see there's kind of that. I don't really want to use stigma, but and label such a harsh word too, but it's true of just that it's just a different way of them communicating. They grew up with a phone in their hand where so many of us didn't, right? It came later in life. I mean, I didn't get a phone till I was in high school. And I think just kind of what we've gone through in the world and the advancements of technology, it's just different generations. Each generation has their own way of kind of viewing the world and what they've experienced. And I feel like that's really what it's all about, is just learning how to speak each other's language.
You are so spot on. And that's such an important place to start. We do hear these darn Gen Zers. I think that that's one of the nicer ways that we've heard, right? I think one of the biggest questions we're hearing right now is how do we get better quality employees? There's this problem with the workforce. They just don't want to work. And I think the root solving any problem begins at the root. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. The problem is they've grown up with these phones in their hands. So their world is so much different. Their brain development has been so much different than any generation prior. And if we can start there, we can understand that, then we're able to come with more compassion than frustration, right? Why don't you know this? Why can't you just be better? Okay, well, it's because the society they grew up in, their brains have developed differently. Let's be a little bit more encouraging in the hand holding. And what I found through, I spoke to 109 22-year-olds who didn't pick up their phone once for 6 hours. They were eager, they were on time, they were engaged, and they kept saying the same thing when we pointed that out. "You guys are giving us so much hope. You're so plugged in. You're so," they all kept saying, "Well, this is such a great opportunity." And we started to see that given purpose and some autonomy with guidance and mentorship, given vulnerable, transparent leadership, and then clear opportunities, those kind of three elements are the secret sauce for really bringing out the best in them. So, like you said, it really is a communication challenge of that they want to grow, they want to be mentored, they really care. We just have to engage them differently than generations prior.
I'd love to get your thoughts on where time, both where we currently are, literally in time, but also from the aspect of not being so rushed and being a little bit more patient comes into play. Because my husband and I were just talking about this the other night, where he and I both lead our middle school youth group at church on Wednesday nights. And I have eighth grade girls and he has sixth grade boys. And I told him, I said, I'm not a mother yet, so I don't have any children, but I was telling him the thing that has shocked me the most about leading this group of girls is how hard it seems to be today to just be a kid, to
Mhm.
just be a kid. Just the access to information, the things that they know about that go on in the world, the big worlds, as in everywhere, but also their little worlds and so much more that they're having to deal with. I'm curious with your thoughts on how all that plays in, because I feel if we just slow down a little bit and give ourselves that room to kind of breathe and actually have that communication, that can go a long, long way.
Yeah, I mean, my heart truly goes out. It hurts my heart to think about what it would be like to be a kid today. I'm not a mother either yet. So, on the one hand, you and I are both perfect parents at this stage,
Right?
right?
I like the way you think.
I think I've seen t-shirts before, like I was a perfect parent before I had kids too. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. So obviously, it's hard for us to speak to things that we haven't experienced ourselves, but then
Yeah.
some from the outside, that outside perspective can help at times too. And I think that, you know, I think about when I will hopefully be a mother, that at least I think there's enough buffer between now and when my kid would be of cell phone age that I feel a little bit hopeful that we will have solved this problem as a society and it won't affect the coming generation. Now, I think a really simple solve. I don't know. This is why I said the disclaimer. We're both perfect parents without having children. Why are we giving children smartphones if we want them to be safe and have access in school to being able to call for safety? Can we have a flip phone? Like, that's where we started, and we
Right.
didn't need that unlimited access, and I am a
Yeah.
total nerd. I'm a neuroscience nerd, hardcore. I love understanding the science of what happens with the neurochemistry and why we do what we do, and man, those little dopamine devices are so dangerous for developing brains.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because I'm even thinking back to when I said I got my cell phone. It was out of necessity because I was in high school, I was doing sports, and it was one of those situations where I wasn't driving yet and a game got canceled due to the weather or something like that. And I had to borrow a friend's phone to call my mom, and she was like, "That's the last time I'm having to worry about this," from the sense of she was actually worried about me not being able to contact her. But that's all I needed was the phone capability.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wild.
I think the same thing. I wasn't allowed to have one, and then I think at
Yeah.
15, learner's permit, same kinda thing. Maybe it was 16, but right in that area, if you're driving, you need a cell phone, but it was just a call. I don't need unlimited information, and I think, this is just trying to put I'm a very, very empathetic person to a fault. I think maybe we may share that a little bit, and just feeling for other people and feeling for the young generation in school being bullied over the phone in ways that probably most people in their lives have no idea. And it has to be terrible. It has to be, whew, very hard.
Yeah, exactly. When I mean, I do remember texting was a big deal, and we had, like, so many text messages, and each one over that was 10 cents, so I remember racking up that first bill a couple of I don't know how you get a couple $100 out of 10-cent text messages, but, here we are, so I get it from that standpoint of there's pros and cons to everything. It has certainly brought us closer together, but maybe on, the negative, it's brought us closer together, and that's something that just needs to be mitigated. I keep saying the same thing with AI. Did Terminator teach us nothing? Like, sure, use it, but it shouldn't go unchecked, right? Like, you can't just load the system and let it fly.
Well, you bring up AI, and I think as somebody who was one of the first people to be disrupted, to be let go, to be replaced by AI, you would think I've had the full range of emotions with it, right? And it is a tool, it's a very good tool. But the best thing about it is actually like the anti movement and the pushback to the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah,
We want humanity. And, I mentioned at the start, helping organizations adapt their brand messaging that was really about being more human. And, now we have earned a living as a communicator, as a writer. I would listen to a podcast and then translate that into an article early in my career. And now we know you can do that at a press of a button. And so everybody's become this great communicator. And what we're seeing is that when you are posting online or you're sharing, people really want the authentic voice. We don't want that polished voice. We want the real. I was recording videos for a course yesterday and I was getting emphatic and my earring fell out and I just made a joke about it and kept going. And I think in the past we would have, oh, edit that out for sure. And even kind of the same, we were talking pre-show, you were talking about editing a moment out. And it's like, no, we want that humanity. So I keep believing in the renaissance. I keep believing that as much disruption that we're facing in 2026, I'm excited and I'm optimistic because I do think that enough of us are getting that push back to in-person connection, communities, more faith I'm seeing in young people and people of all generations. And I think that these are beautiful things to focus on.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, hey, you know what? If we all band together, surely we can make this movement. I think the same thing too of just that authenticity and being real. I feel like you can really tell. There are some individuals that I'm connected with and I know their voice because I interact with them on a daily basis, and when I see some posts come out I'm like, I don't really feel like you wrote that. That's not, and mainly from the point that it's not quite their voice.
Yeah. And, so yes, and I think one of the best systems that I've integrated on how can I use AI because yes, the demands for content creation, for getting out there, there's a lot. And I started a LinkedIn newsletter sometime I think in November or so, and I've developed a system where now I'm doing a live stream talking for 10 to 20 minutes, then feeding that transcript, that audio into ChatGPT and having it help turn that into a newsletter format and then going back and editing it even further. And I think
Yeah.
that as long as we're putting our voice and then using it to tighten up and help us
Yes.
to repurpose that voice, repurpose that content, that's been a really good method. Sometimes I still do see things that I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect. Push it out. We all know we're using AI a little bit, but I'm connecting, here's the live stream if you'd rather watch that. So there's still a lot of humanity there. And I'm hoping that that's a good, effective use and mix of both, which is
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah. Again, it's not, avoid it completely. It's just don't let the machine go unchecked. What kind of one more question around this too that some other leaders I'm connected with have brought up, and I totally see it just from their standpoint, but I really feel like as AI is impacting Gen Z, it seems to be taking away a lot of those entry level opportunities for them, right? And we already hear that aspect of when you go to your first job and they're like, well, we want someone that with experience. Okay, well, how are you supposed to get experience if no one's willing to give you that opportunity? Do you see that? are there ways that Gen Z, there's something that they're doing to help themselves stand out and add that value? Like, from your standpoint, what are you seeing with that?
Okay, from my standpoint, I have a big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm working on
Yes.
now, and it is to solve this problem exactly. And I'm talking with different leaders, getting all perspectives. That's why you asked me earlier, okay, if we have one word, and I was like hospitality, because my gosh, yes. So I was forwarded an article just the other day by The Atlantic. It said well, the title was a little, whatever. The job market is HE double hockey sticks, we'll say. And it's like level professionals are using AI to write their applications. Jobs are using AI to review the applications. And so what's happened now, the job market is at a standstill, and new reports are showing that it has slowed to the point of the Great Recession, where in Georgia, unemployment rose in 2008, 2009, 135%. This is, I think we're about the same age. I was graduating college, going into that job market, could not even find an unpaid internship. And the same job market is happening right now. So bringing it back to my big, hairy, audacious goal, I went into food and beverage. My degree was in hospitality design. I was going to sit behind a computer and have a respectable job and be a respectable person. The last thing I wanted to do was go into restaurants. It seemed beneath me. And I think that there is this narrative that has been pushed for many years. I've been working remote for 12 years now. And I can tell you it was once the dream, but that isolation leads to so many of the mental health issues that this new generation isn't shy of talking about. So, the narrative that we want to work remotely, the narrative that we want to have tech jobs, that's where so many young professionals are trying to get entry level. But I see hospitality as the best leadership incubator that's ever existed. If you talk to anybody that's worked in the service industry, they will say everybody should work in the service industry. I posted a picture a couple weeks back of me standing there bright and smiling at like 23 years old behind the bar. And it blew up with comments. So many people saying, oh, my kids, this is a must for my kids. It's a rule that they have to go into service industry. And it brought up this conversation of how these soft skills, how this communication, these things that they struggle with from being behind their phone. Well, whether you're in retail or food and beverage, if you're in service industry, you have to learn that. You learn leadership
Yeah.
presence, you learn confident communication, you learn conflict resolution, and those skills are very transferable. It is the reason that I've been disrupted. That I'm rising in my fourth industry now. I used to be like, "What's wrong with me?" And then I realized God has a bigger plan for me, giving me an education of how to thrive through disruption. And it started back in that hospitality industry. So I'm working on the big, hairy, audacious goal of getting, really, I want to be sponsored by hotels in food and beverage, go speak to all of the universities. And, I found this out too, that many of the students majoring in hospitality are choosing not to go into that career, largely because of the narrative that they want tech and remote work. So I want to bring everybody together in the same room. I will have that opportunity in June. I'm really excited about it to say, hey, senior leaders, this is what you need to know about the shifts you can make to engage your next generation of talent. Hey, next generation of talent, here's what you need to do to be taken a little more seriously. Okay. All come together. Let's see this. And then I want to like pair them almost like a job fair. And that was birthed by what I saw at IMEX America with that Future Leader Forum that I was mentioning, the 100 students that came together. They got, actual interviews and internships and roles from being in that same room. So I think that we've taken AI and we're like, yeah, let's automate everything. Let's give it all these roles. But like we're seeing, we're at a standstill now of great recession proportions, not because the jobs don't exist, but nobody's able to get placed. So I'm like, well, forget the internet. Let's put them all in a room together and mediate whatever problems they think they are and ship everybody off as one big happy family. So glad you asked. That is what I'm working on.
Yes. I love that. No, that makes I never worked in a restaurant, but I worked in a shoe store, which probably has a lot of similarities there. But yeah, I mean, I was in high school, so I was one of the very uncool kids that every Friday and Saturday night up until 9 p.m. I was working at the shoe store. So dealing with people, and I mean, that's the big aspect of it, right? Is again, working on that communication skills of what happens when you have to take a phone call and send out a shipment and you get an angry customer that comes in the store.
And you're in
Oh,
the
so
team,
many life
you're
skills.
the only one, and you have to figure out how to manage your like, all those skills
Yeah,
you're struggling with can be taught in this entry level industry. So I think it's just shifting the narrative from, "Hey, you think that you want tech and remote," but actually I have friends who are nearly 40 who are in tech and keep losing their job every 6 to 12 months because tech is actually the first one there. Tech lets a lot of people go.
right.
That is an easily affected industry in that way, and the skills that they have aren't really transferable. But if you build your entry level with these leadership skills that you can carry with you in any industry, well, suddenly they're getting paid to learn and be mentored and strengthened and then figure out where they want to go. So, this is what I'm working on this year.
Love it. That's a perfect setup and segue because now I wanna talk a little bit about Christy.
Mm.
So you and we really met through Few, right? Few Atlanta. We got connected there. So I know we have kind of that shared interest in faith and women in faith and then women in business. So talk to me about Christy. Like, how did she get where she is today? What drives you? What kind of gives you that passion and fieriness and just that purpose? And also to keep developing, right? And keep growing. I think avoiding that stagnation and coming out of that isolation, can really make or break each chapter, especially as women in business and as we move through a changing world.
Well, I'll start that very big question.
It is.
The word my mentor and business coach at our end of year review. I've gotten where I am today by faith and grit alone. And, I alluded to the fact that I've been disrupted now, 3 disrupted industries in my 4th now, and it's easy to maybe gloss over that, but it is not for the faint-hearted. It is not something I would have chosen. It is very difficult. We mentioned a little bit about the health journey that I'm going through. My health journey in my 20s was really the catalyst for why I left and traveled for 5 years overseas because once my health was restored, a lot of gut issues that were a chain reaction culminating in a breast lump that had to get removed. I didn't have insurance. We didn't know if it was cancerous or not. I had to go under the knife and make decisions. And after that, I was like, man, if I'm healthy, I'm wealthy. And
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
led me to travel. And I'm not missing maybe some of the parallels right now that I talk about that a lot. Health is our greatest wealth. And I've spent last couple years running myself into the ground. And I'm facing some of those same health challenges again today because when you don't know where your money's coming from and your industry has been disrupted and the things that I used to do for money as a high paid, lucrative, go anywhere, very highly skilled thing has now become automated in a push of a button. What do you do with that? Where do you go next? How do you make that
Yes.
happen? And that's why you said communication and leadership are both very loaded words. There's a lot in there, and just like marketing, just like branding, it was hard for me to find my focus for a while. Well, I can help you and I can help you and I can help you and I can help you. And so what happened is that I was helping all these people with slightly different things. To me, it's all the same. It's all leadership communication. It's all reaching your intended audience so you have more impact. It makes so much sense to me, but the application of that is slightly different with everybody I was serving. Man, I share all this to say that we all know the growth journey is not linear. I've had a lot of people reaching out to me lately with kind words, people who, my neighbors, some girlfriends, people who have watched me grow over the last few years, and they've shared that it's inspiring. And I could get emotional very easily about it because it means so much to me to be a role model for what it looks like to work hard and to
Mm,
have faith. And to keep going no matter
Mhm.
how many times the rug's been pulled out from under, say, "You know what? I have unwavering faith in myself that I am going to get to where God's called me to." And my faith journey is something beautiful. I've been wanting to I actually stopped I was doing yoga every Monday at 11, which prevented me from being with few, and I just decided this week, I was like, "You know what? I need to switch things up because I do need this faith community of women back in my life." It is so important, and I think that really being able to connect to our unique purpose, I know maybe sometimes that word is overused, but in today's world where information is so accessible, it is our uniqueness, it is our humanity, it is our special divine purpose that we should be tapping into and following because nothing else is going to work. Nothing else is going to give us that security for the long haul unless we are really in that work. And so, to tie it back to AI and disruption and the rest of the conversation, you can't count on anything except what is uniquely you. And I think that we're at a special time in history where we're both able to and forced to kind of lean more into that than we ever have before.
I feel like Gen Z would probably use terms like mad respect and riz somewhere in what I'm about to say because, yeah, it's everything you said is so true. It hits home. I think for a really long time, I struggled with, well, if I'm meeting opposition and if bad things are happening, that means I'm not being good enough. Bad stuff
Mhm.
just happens. Life happens, and that's life because we're in a fallen world. But not only that, so very often when you hit opposition is the exact proof that you're headed in the right direction. And I think sometimes we just don't see it that way. We're like, wow, why is this so difficult? I must be doing something wrong. No, you're doing something right. That's why it's difficult. If it was easy to achieve, I guess we'd all be out here killing some dreams. So
I love this metaphor, and you perfectly brought it up. If we were all just flatlining, would we be living? You get hooked up to a heart rate monitor machine in the hospital and you see it go beep, 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 beep. That's life. That's living. And then if it flatlines, you're not living. So I think about that sometimes. And you are absolutely right. When the going gets tough, that's often a test. It's think about being on the beach and the waves come crashing in. But as soon as you break through the waves, then it's smooth. And life and our journey is so much like that. And if we quit when the going gets tough, well, we're never really going to feel fulfilled or have that happiness that comes from persevering. And as somebody who's in a long season of perseverance, I can tell you it's gonna be really rewarding when
yes.
things connect and also the moving target, right? Different versions of me would say, "I'm living my dreams here right now. I just booked an amazing stage that I get to go to in June, helping people using my gifts of communication, not being scared to speak up anymore." Just that would have been a dream come true. So I think it's also important to remember that the goalpost is always going to move, and I say this to myself as much as I say this to anybody listening. We need to remember to enjoy the journey. That goalpost is always going to move.
Yeah. And I think just opening up that mindset too to see it in my previous podcast conversation, we were talking about failure. And my guest was sharing a story on how he had the first job he had ever quit. This is a 24-year veteran. He doesn't quit, right? Like, quit is not in his vocabulary, but he quit this job. And at the time he was explaining, he felt like that was a failure. Like, he felt like he was a failure. But when we started talking about it, he quit the job because number one, he wasn't happy there. But number two, it was actually taking him away from all the other things he wanted to do. It was taking him away for whatever the next best opportunity was. But not only that, it was taking him away from his family, his wife and 3 children. So it's like, if you're not happy there, yes, we all have to have jobs. We have to pay the bills. We have to make money. But you can work somewhere that you love just as much as you can sit in a job forever that you don't. So when the next opportunity comes, quitting what wasn't working shouldn't be seen as a failure. And sometimes I think it's just even that shift of like, am I sitting here and I'm holding on to it because if I feel like I let go, that that is a failure? Or is it bravery to say, I'm going to get out of this thing that's no longer serving me?
You're exactly right, and so what's coming up for me is something I called empowered no's, and when you say no from that place of, "I know I'm worth more or valued more or needed more elsewhere, so I'm gonna close the door to this," often that brings us whatever big, great thing that we want from
Yeah.
having courage, like you said, to close that door. So sometimes you're saying perspective shifts, and sometimes it's just a language shift too, right? Is this a quit and a failure, or is this an empowered no? That's an empowered no. Yeah, that feels good. So definitely
I
been there
like
before.
that. I'm going to use it.
Please do.
I'll give you credit. I'll
Nah,
credit
take
you.
no.
I'll credit and tag you. Oh gosh. Okay. I could ask you a million more questions because now my mind's going all over the place. I'm telling you, I knew that these conversations at the top of the year were going to be. I mean, I'm being selfish. I knew that they were going to be good for me. They'll be good for the listeners too. All right. So last question is a question I ask all my guests, and I set it up because, I titled the podcast If I Ever Live to Be. And each show title then is something that I aspire to be. And sometimes it's quite the oxymoron because, for example, our mutual friends, Matt and Buffy Payne, that they came on the show a year ago, and I titled that episode Brave. But like, brave is no destination, right? Like, you have to decide every day to show up and be brave. So, the final question is, what would Christy name the show? What does Christy your if I ever live to be? What is that thing that you wanna be known for?
I thought about this question knowing the name of the podcast and
Yep.
knowing that it was going to come back in some way. And I didn't premeditate an answer. And I honestly don't know right now. I'll share that, what do I want to be known for? As somebody who has had this calling to be on stage, to be a thought leader, to motivate others, to have a book, to have a body of wisdom that other people follow, there has been a healthy dance with ego, right? Do I want to be known for XYZ? Am I
Mm,
coming at it from that place? Or am I coming at it from a place of servant? Of service, am I being of service to others? And so I'll admit for a long part, my first big stage experience was in 2019. And my ego, though that day I led 40 people to face their biggest fear of public speaking on stage, liberated them. One went on to be an award winning speaker. That was true service. It was not about me. But I said, this is the best feeling I've ever felt in my life. I want more of this. And it's been that dance with the ego. So, in unpacking this here live in the moment right now, I really wanna be of service. I want to, you asked me the one word too, and I said future. I just see a direction we're going, and I see a direction we can go, and if I can have any amount of ripple effect to move from this isolated friction place of culture clashing between what we believe in and what age we are and where we live and what color our skin is and all of that, if I can do anything to help bring us back to more unity and harmony and just appreciating our differences, I've lived in 35 countries. I love culture. I think it's something to be celebrated. If I can have any help in bringing people into more unity and harmony, that's it for me. That really is it.
I love that.
I
And I
don't
love
know.
all.
Can you extrapolate a title from that, Whitney?
Yeah. Oh, I will. Oh, I will. Sometimes I have to sit with it too. Sometimes I have to sit with it for a moment and, think about what the guest said and things that I took away from it too. And also what I think the audience will take away from it. I mean, That's some of the best moments is I'll get text messages all the time from folks who listen to the show and, they'll call out particular things that they learned or guests. So that always makes my day. But I love how thoughtful you were with the answer and just thinking through it in the moment. You know what? And sometimes it changes. I think God gives us multiple purposes. And so just depending on what stage of life we're in, that's our, calling that we rise to on that occasion. Sometimes it's what is the phrase? Some people are there for a lifetime, some are for a lesson. I feel like there's another word in there.
And some are for a season, some are for a reason. Is the rest some are for a lifetime? I don't know, I
I
think
think so, something like something like that. Wow, I should have thought that one through too, huh? But you know where I'm going.
I do.
It's kinda like that, it develops, and I think, and part of that's because we don't know what's gonna happen in our lives. We can't we're speaking to what our purpose and focus is right now based on our past, but, we don't know the future. So
No, and I always say I've lived 5 different lives by now, so
yeah.
how many more, are in there, but I think
Yeah.
for me, the answer really always does come back to, am I doing this from a place of service? Am I doing this from a place of ego? I'm sure there's ego involved in a lot of things, but it changes everything. Even as a speaker, one of the things that we learn is if we're trying to go up there and be impressive, we're stiff, we're nervous, we're this. But if we're coming from a place of service, we're going to tap in. We're going to be helpful and useful and speak to what the people in the room need to hear that day. And that's the most amazing feeling in the world. And if I ever live to be, I will be doing that at a very large scale.
Yeah, I love that. This has been so good, Christy. If people want to connect with you, learn more, work with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
You can find all my socials and everything on my site, leadnextwave.com. We can share the link and hopefully you can put it in the show notes and you can reach out, book time with me, email, find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Meta, all the places.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming and being vulnerable too.
Yes. Thank you, Whitney.
Mhm. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode. So many of you send me emails and text messages with what resonated with you from each show and guest. So I always love to read those. Keep them coming. Just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know about two upcoming events that are happening in February and March. The first, definitely be sure to look up Ashley of Urban Trend Studios. This event's really for teens and tweens. So if you have a young lady in your life that's a daughter, sister you know of, you want to spread the word. Her event is I Am More Than. The Tilbridge, my company, is super excited to sponsor this event. So be sure to check that out. Again, that's from Urban Trend Studios. My buddy Logan and I have our No Script Needed event coming up March 28th. We would love to have you in the audience. So check out the event on Eventbrite or on Facebook. All the details are there. You're going to love our guests, Matt and Buffy Payne and Big Rich Rock Comedy. Both have been on my show and Logan's show as well. So we're going to get on stage, talk about the struggles of being an entrepreneur, starting a business, starting a nonprofit, and all the goodness in between with no script. So straight off the cuff. We will see you there.